If you're one of the many people picking up a new Samsung Galaxy S9 or S9 Plus right now, then you might be overwhelmed by the sheer amount of stuff these phones can do. If you can imagine a phone doing it, then chances are it's a feature in the latest Samsung flagships. So where do you begin? I wrapped up the first 9 things you should do to get started with your shiny new Galaxy. Stick around and remember to subscribe so you don't miss the rest of our S9 coverage. If you're coming from another Android phone, chances are the S9's default button layout will probably drive you a little bit mad. Fortunately, it's easy to swap back to the proper button order, back, home, then recents, in the display settings. From here you can also tweak the sensitivity of the virtual home key. I find a slightly more sensitive setting works well for me, and it's also possible to change the colour of the navigation bar, though this colour will only be applied in apps that don't define their own navbar colour. Intelligent Scan is the big new biometric feature in the Galaxy S9, and while it's not quite as quick as Apple's Face ID, it is worth playing around with to see if it's right for you. Intelligent Scan uses either face recognition through the front-facing camera, or iris recognition through the iris scanner to unlock, depending on how bright the environment is. You'll find it under the lock screen and security menu, and it takes just a minute to set up. If you find it doesn't work for you, you can carry on using the fingerprint scanner as normal and disable Intelligent Scan in the same menu. Speaking of fingerprint, there's a handy gesture that you'll definitely want to enable now that the Galaxy S9's fingerprint scanner is in a place you can actually reach. Go to Finger Sensor Gestures under Advanced Settings, and you can map a swipe down on the sensor to bring down the notification shade. A bunch of other phones do this out of the box, but Samsung for some reason doesn't enable this gesture as standard, and it's super useful if you're using an S9 Plus and don't want to constantly reach up to the top of the screen. If you want a slightly different notification shortcut, the Samsung launcher has an option to map a swipe down anywhere on the home screen to do the same thing. The other gesture I find myself using all the time on these phones is for one-handed mode, particularly on the S9 Plus. You'll find it under Advanced Features, and there are a couple of options here. Swipe up diagonally from either of the bottom corners to shrink the display to a more manageable size, or use a triple tap gesture on the home key. You can then easily resize the shrunken window, snap it to a different side of the screen, or go full screen again. There are a couple of other gestures on the S9 that are useful for frequent multitaskers. Unlike other Android phones, long pressing the recents key on the S9 doesn't automatically open split screen mode. You need to enable this under Advanced Settings, and while you're there you'll see another option to quickly jump to pop-up window mode. With this enabled, you can swipe inwards from one of the top corners to shrink a full screen app down into a little window, then use the controls to maximize or minimize. Of course, you can always drag apps to the top or center of the screen from the Recents menu if you don't want to use these gestures. By default, Samsung phones only show you the top 3 most recent notification icons in the status bar. That's fine if you want to keep things decluttered, but if you want to see more, there's a simple fix in the settings. Go to the display menu and find Show Recent Notifications Only, then toggle it off and you'll see as many icons as the screen will allow. Autofill with Google is one of the really useful new features in Android Oreo that can sync your passwords between Chrome and Android, but on the S9 it's disabled by default, and Samsung instead pushes you towards its own Samsung Pass service. Nothing wrong with that, but you might already have a bunch of passwords saved in your Google account, so it might be more convenient to use Google's service. So to enable Google's autofill feature, you need to manually toggle it on. The easiest way to do this is just to search autofill in the settings, then toggle to autofill with Google. Simple, then apps can pull in sign-in data that you might have saved from Chrome or other Android phones. And finally, Bixby. Samsung's intelligent assistant has gotten better over the past year, but for many of us it's still kind of a non-starter. So if you find yourself pressing that Bixby button when you're trying to press volume down, or just take the phone out of your pocket, then you might want to disable the Bixby Home shortcut key. To do this, open Bixby Home in the launcher, tap the cog icon up top, then disable the toggle. Doing this doesn't disable the long press for Bixby Voice, so if you find this feature useful you can still use it. So those are the first 9 things to get you started with some of the S9's more useful hidden features. Share your own tips down in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss our future S9 videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.